Hey guys, so tonight I'm going to share a message that I got from reading the book of Matthew, and it's from Matthew 14, and we're also going to look at Matthew 8 and then Mark 4. And this is basically showing us how storms allow us to see God's power. So in Matthew 14, verses 22 through 32, this is where Jesus was walking on the water when the disciples were in, I think it was the second storm that they had experienced on the boat. The first storm in Matthew 8, Jesus was in the boat with them. In Matthew 14, Jesus was not in the boat with them. And so in Matthew 14, where they saw Jesus walking on the water, this was where Peter actually called out to the Lord to say, Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you walking on the water. And then he says, yes, come. And then when Peter starts to walk on the water, he looks around and looks down and he freaks out. He loses faith in Jesus and he starts to sink. And then Jesus immediately reached out and pulled him up out of the water. And the disciples were saying, you really are the Son of God. This is after they had witnessed Jesus walking on the water, and he had calmed the storm after that too. But in Matthew 8, verses 23 through 27, the first storm, the disciples say, who is this man? Even the wind and waves obey him. So we're going to kind of look at how they go from in the first storm saying, who is this man that even the wind and waves obey him, to the second storm, you really are the Son of God. So they go from kind of doubting to actually knowing and recognizing who Jesus really is. And it seems as though witnessing God's power before the first storm wasn't quite enough for them to know who he was, because even before the first storm, they had saw Jesus perform many miracles. He had cast out a bunch of evil spirits and he was healing a lot of people. So they've had glimpses of who he is and his power, but yet when that first storm came, they still were like, who is this man that even the wind and waves obey him? Like, we've seen you heal people and cast out evil spirits, but even the wind and waves obey you? Like, they ain't never seen anything like it. And we're going to talk about how in different gospels there are different details pointed out about when Jesus calms the storm. So in Mark 4, verses 35 through 41, the detail that sticks out to me the most is in verse 38, and it says, Jesus was asleep at the back of the boat with his head on a cushion. So to me, the cushion, like him resting his head on a cushion, it symbolizes a sense of peace, a sense of rest, a sense of just like he just was not disturbed. Like his head was on a cushion, like he was relaxed. He wasn't worried about anything. And it also stands out to me because it's not mentioned in any of the other gospels, and it seems to have been noted for us to notice it. Like they pointed that out, like not only was he asleep in this boat, but he was asleep with his head on a cushion, so he was relaxed. And I feel like that's an important detail. And then in Luke 8, I'm sorry, we're also going to talk about Luke. So in Luke 8, verses 22 through 25, verse 23 stands out to me because it says, the boat was filling with water and they were in real danger. This is still the first storm that we're talking about. And so the fact that it says they were in real danger, it emphasizes the actual severity of the storm, because with that sort of severity, and then Jesus responds, he says in Matthew 8 and Mark 4, why are you afraid? That response is sort of unexpected, because if Luke tells us that they were actually in real danger, like they weren't overreacting, they weren't just freaking out for no reason. Like the boat was filling with water, and when they had screamed out to Jesus, like, we're going to drown, Luke lets us know they were really in danger. So they had every reason to be afraid. And yet, Jesus says to them when they wake him up, why are you afraid? And so that's not the kind of question that you'd expect when you're facing real danger, actually. And you see the Lord asleep, physically asleep in front of you. Like they saw him asleep. He wasn't moving. The storm didn't wake him up. He was completely unbothered. And then there's another detail that I noticed is the same in all four gospel accounts in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. The disciples woke him up shouting. In every single gospel account, it says they woke him up shouting. So they were panicking with good reason to panic, as Luke tells us. And so we want to know, why did Jesus then ask them, why are you afraid? Like, why are you afraid? I know you're in real danger, but why are you afraid? And it's kind of perplexing when you think about it. But the answer is because he was with them, the one that they had saw heal the sick, casting out evil spirits, that he was with them. That's why he didn't know why they were afraid. Even though he was asleep in front of them, that's his first response is, why are you afraid? And so what I've learned from reading the gospels and my own personal experience with the Lord is that usually when he's asking a question, he's also telling you the answer. So when he says, why are you afraid? That translates to, you should not be afraid. Like, why are you this? He means you should not be this. Like, you have no reason to be. And so it's easy for him to say this, but it's not always easy for us to believe it. He's aware of who he is and his power at all times, but sometimes we forget or we've not experienced it yet. And so when we get a silent God during a terrifying storm, which is what the disciples had with Jesus sleeping in the boat, like he was silent to them and, like, snoozing, we have to remember that he truly never sleeps nor slumbers, as Psalm 121 tells us. It tells us that God never sleeps. The one who watches over everything, he never sleeps nor slumbers. Even when he is physically asleep as Jesus, he is never ever actually slumbering. So when he seems silent to us, he is never not aware of what's going on. He is always paying the most attention to us. He's the orchestrator of everything. He's never asleep. He doesn't miss anything, even if he's silent. And so Jesus, who knows all things, surely knew before he settled down to a nap that a fierce storm was coming. He knew before he put his head on that cushion that a storm was going to come. And he could have had it planned out that way so that they would see that he could be asleep during a storm and wake up and rebuke it immediately. You have no cause for concern when I'm around, is what that says to me. And at that time, the disciples, they didn't seem to truly know who he was. Even though they had heard some of Jesus's teachings and saw some miracles, they still asked, who is this man that even the wind and waves obey him? Yet when they woke him up, they called him Master, Teacher, Lord, and that tells us that they knew who he was to an extent, but not with a whole lot of depth. They still probably had some doubts in their hearts, or they were seeing the miracles, but they weren't like fully taking them in yet. So they knew that he was Master, Teacher, and Lord, but they still had like learning to do and their hearts to be awakened more to his power. And the same can go for our faith. We can witness works of God and read who he says he is in his Bible, but sometimes we still don't really know him until we're in real danger, and he comes through in a way that we know only it could have only been God. Sometimes it takes a storm for us to really see who he is and to see and know his true power, so that we know we can trust in him. We are doing the right thing by putting our faith in him. He is almighty and all powerful and sovereign. Everything must bow to his command. And so he wakes up and he asks, why do we have little faith? When he finally comes through in our storm, or we hear from him or get a revelation, it's always, why do you have so little faith? You should not have this little faith. You have me. Trust in me. And then so we get to know that the one who sends or allows the storm is also the one that can control it and calm it. And so it's also a way for him to make himself known, which is part of his plan. His plan is for us to know him and make him known. And sometimes it takes a storm for us to be able to know his power and then share it with other people. Well, I went through this and it seemed impossible, but let me tell you how God actually got me through it, because it was no one else but God. And then in Matthew 14, when the disciples saw Jesus walk on the water, they went from, "Who is this man?" to, "You really are the Son of God," they exclaimed. So God can use trying times to reveal himself and his power to us. And so even though we probably all have doubts and lack of faith in some areas, Jesus is letting us know that we don't need to doubt and or have a lack of faith when he's in the boat with us. So if you're going through a storm, I would like to encourage you to get to know your Lord and Savior, because he's the one that's in control. He can calm it at any instant. If he wakes up from a nap and rebukes it immediately, that thing has to stop, no questions asked. His power is unmatched. It cannot be rivaled whatsoever. So I hope that this message will encourage you to get to know him and get to know his true power and his love and his care for you.